Hello again. Once more, it's me, Simon Bennett. I'm ZAP project lead, in case you didn't know. And today I'm going to be talking about the all-new ZAP automation framework. And I suppose the very first question some of you might have is, why have we got a new automation framework? And that's a very good question, because ZAP is known for having being a particularly good tool, security tool for automating. So we have various options, but as you'll see, they're not perfect. So we've got the command line. So you can run ZAP from the command line. There's a -cmd option, and ZAP will run in line, and it will do a spider and attack whatever you point it at. This is all very well, but it's very limited options, so there isn't a great deal you can do with that. It's not very configurable. We do have the package scans. These are much more configurable, and a lot of you are already using them, but they're still not ideal. And that's because there's lots of different ways for configuring them. So we have the command line options you can pass to ZAP. We also have a configuration file for the rules, and they're not particularly standard, and they are confusing. And the package scans are, for historical reasons, completely tied to Docker. And there's no reason for that apart from history. So they should be able to run just the same way if they're any other container, or if they were actually done from the command line. It's just for historical reasons, they were implemented in Docker. We have other options. There is a Jenkins plugin, but that is now no longer supported. So we don't recommend that it's actually used. And finally, we have the daemon and API. And in fact, this is what the package scans use themselves. And so that's very flexible. But if you actually want to start using them, the API is much harder to understand. It doesn't hold your hand very much. You have to go through and do everything one step at a time. It's as if you were actually using the ZAP desktop. So you have to be very explicit in exactly what you want to do. So it's for this reason we've decided to create an all-new ZAP automation framework. And this is different than the other options because it runs entirely in ZAP. So it's going to be controlled by a completely new add-on. But it is very easy to extend. So any other ZAP add-on can plug into it. This makes it much easier for us to develop it and maintain it. And also, it's got much more simple configuration. There's going to be one YAML file which defines everything that you will do as part of an automation run. So there is actually, at the moment, there is no UI for the automation framework. It is all done from the command line. At some point, we'll probably have a UI, but at the moment, there isn't one. So instead, what you need to do is you'll need to run it from the command line. And when you run it from the command line, you'll find there are 4 options that are specific to the automation framework. The first one is the important one, auto run. So you specify a YAML file, and ZAP will then run the automation jobs that are defined in that file. Then we have 3 commands for generating those files. So we've got a kind of autogen min, which generates a template automation file with what we think are the essential parameters that you're most likely to want to change. Then we've got an autogen max, and this will generate the template file with all of the parameters, or nearly all of them. We might have a few which we kind of keep hidden or don't show you by default. And then we've got an option for generating the template based on your current configurations. Now, this is something that we probably will put into the UI as well, the last one, because what that would mean is you would then be able to set up the ZAP desktop, get everything working the way you want, and then export your configurations in a template file for the automation framework. So this is an example, a very simple example of the minimal YAML configuration file. So we have an environment, and you have to have at least one context, but that's very simple. You just give it a name and a URL, and then you define a set of jobs. And this is kind of minimum set that would be kind of useful. This is where we're doing the standard spider. We're waiting for the passive scan to complete, and then we're running a report. So as you can see, at a very basic level, it's very simple. But what I want to do now is show you some demos and show you something that's a little bit more realistic. So I am just going to switch over. And what I want to do is show you the minimal configuration. So if you run that option to generate the minimal configuration, you'll get something like this. This will be changing over time. The automation framework is still at a very early stage, but you'll get something like this. Basically, get one context, and for that you need to define a URL, but you will be able to have include and exclude paths as per the standard ZAP configuration. And there'll be authentication, although that's not implemented yet. Then there'll be a set of parameters, and you'll have options like being able to fail if there's an error or fail if there's a warning, and actually outputting any progress to standard out. Then we have the set of jobs, and there'll be a number of jobs, including you'll actually be able to define add-ons. So these are add-ons that aren't included in your ZAP install by default. So you can actually install and uninstall add-ons, and you can also check for updates and auto-update ZAP from within this job. Then we have a job here for configuring the passive scanner. So we can configure things like the maximum number of alerts per rule that gets raised, whether only scanning in scope, the maximum body size, all the things you can configure via the ZAP desktop and the command line parameters. Then we have the spider, so the standard spider, and by default, it will use the first context that has been defined, but if you've defined more than one context, you can specify which one, and you can specify a URL. So you can actually start spidering from a different URL than the top of the context. And we've got options for checking the number of URLs that have been found and failing or warning if you're finding less than you expect. And this is something that we couldn't do very easily with existing automation options. We could report these kind of things, but you couldn't easily kind of fail a job if you weren't finding as many URLs as you expect. Then we've kind of got the maximum duration, depth, and maximum children, or standard ZAP spider configuration. Then after running the spider, we can wait, and you can actually specify either it'll wait until the passive scan is finished, or you can put the number of minutes in there. So this is very much like the baseline scan. And we've got the active scan here, so you can actually specify how long rules and scans, maximum duration for any of those. And again, it will by default run against the first context. You can specify a different context or a different URL. And then we've got some options for reporting. So that is the minimal configuration that we think is useful. But I've got the kind of maximum configuration, and this will definitely change. We're going to have lots more options coming here, but this will just give you an idea of the kind of things. So you'll see under the spider, there are a lot more options, which you'll recognize if you've played around with the spider options, and active scanning again. So these are all of the parameters you'll find in the standard ZAP options by the desktop, but all exposed within one YAML file to make it much easier. And we will have descriptions so you can actually get an idea of what you're changing. So those are the files, but what I want to do is actually run one of these scans for you. So I've got some scripts set up. So I've got a very simple script, and all this does, so it's starting ZAP up on a Mac, so that's how you start ZAP on the Mac. We've got this auto run option, and then we have that is the YAML file, and I'm running command, so just running the ZAP on the command line rather than actually starting the desktop run, I think. So I will kick that off, and it'll only take a minute or so, but while it's running, I might as well actually get in and show you what this one looks like. So in this case, the context is budget, so we're running against budget, running locally. and not actually updating any add-ons at the moment, defining the maximum number of rules, and you can see here that you can actually override passive scan rules. So here we're setting the private IP disclosure to high, and you can see it's actually finished because it popped up the report. What we can see now is got the spider parameters, just setting things like passing comments. Passive scanning, I was only waiting for 1 minute. And you can see down here in reporting, I've got this display option, which you're probably not good by default, it's false. But I just put it in there so that I can use it for demos. And that's why we had this report, which came up. And you'll see that it's a fairly standard ZAP report. So it's found, there's no high levels because we're not doing active scanning. But, it does the baseline scan. So after doing that, I will just show you the active scan script that I've got, and that is going to be very similar, but I'll kick it off anyway. You can actually see here that because I was reporting things on the command line, you can see that we're running the jobs, we're running the passive scanner configuration, we're running the spider, saw how many URLs it found, etc., etc. So I'll kick off the active scan this time. And if we have a look at this, this is very similar. But what I've done is, you'll see I've actually got this policy definition, and I've turned all of the rules off. And this is because it'll actually take some time if we're running ZAP with all of the rules enabled. So I've turned them all off, and then I've configured the cross-site scripting reflected to be back to medium. So that means we've only got one active scan rule enabled. So as you can see, this is much easier than the configuration, much more standard than the configuration that you would get from the package scans. And here you can see we've actually now found a cross-site scripting vulnerability. So hopefully you'll see that this is a very simple configuration. So if you want to just get things, when you want to start playing around with it, it's very easy. But all of the ZAP configurations are there, or will be there in time. So you'll be able to have full control, and you'll be able to do things like you can actually run the spider multiple times, or the active scanner multiple times. So you might want to run the active scanner on the particular profile. So you do a very simple scan of everything, and then you run it again with, say, cross-site scripting at a higher level, something like that. Or you could actually run the active scanner on a separate part of your application compared with what you're running the spider against. So it will be very flexible. Those are the demos I showed you. And what I want to say is which core features will be supported. So seen there, passive scanning, we've got configuration and waiting for it to complete. Traditional spider is going to be supported. Active scanning, actually I should have mentioned the add-ons as well. So you'll be able to download and install add-ons, all as part of this framework. We will have support for authentication, not in the first version, but that's clearly something a lot of people want. So that's going to be coming very soon. But then add-ons will be supported as well, and any add-on can support the authentication the automation framework. But we will be targeting the Ajax Spider and then the API-based add-ons, so OpenAPI, SOAP, and GraphQL. So it will be all of these will be supported very soon. I can't tell you exactly when they'll be supported. As you might have noticed, I'm actually running this, we're recording this before the conference, so not sure exactly what's going to be in by the time we release it, but hopefully most of these will be there. So one thing you probably want to know is, when can you try it out? And you can try it out right now. So it's on the ZAP Marketplace. It's called the Automation Framework. But make sure you update all of the other add-ons too. And that is because the add-ons will have to be updated to support this framework, and therefore you want to download those in order to pick up those features. Lastly, I want to say that feedback will be very much appreciated. Now, that was actually quite a short session, but there's a reason for that, and that's because I've got something else that I want to announce. And that is, you might have noticed that there was reporting included in that. And those who've played around with ZAP reporting, you might have seen it didn't look quite the same as the standard reporting. And that's because we have a problem with ZAP reporting. It is very basic. The core functionality hasn't changed since Paros days. And we have 3 reporting add-ons on the marketplace, but unfortunately, none of them are really being actively maintained. We've known this is a problem for some time, but we haven't had a chance to do anything about it. This is now the time to do something about it, because there is now a 4th add-on, which should be on the marketplace by the time you see this, and this one will be officially maintained. So how is this different? Basically, we're using a new way of generating the add-ons. So previously we used XML and XSLT, and it was possible to put in your own templates, but I'm not sure if anyone did, and it was quite complicated. I did try playing around with creating new templates, and it was quite painful. So we are now using an open source templating library called Timeleaf, which is very flexible and very powerful. So it supports the automation framework. So where you saw the reporting job, that was not being generated by the core or by the reporting by the automation framework add-on itself. This is the new reporting add-on which supports the automation framework. The initial focus is very much on the infrastructure. So we're trying to put in place all of the features that we know you want. As some of you will know, we had a questionnaire go out recently, and a lot of you filled that in, explain the kind of features you're looking for. And what we've done is we've taken that on board, and the idea is we want to make sure that the new reporting framework will support all of the things that you want. So the kind of things we want to support, the formats, HTML, Markdown, JSON, XML, and PDF. And very flexible alert filtering. That's something that's clearly important to you. And we want to make sure that you can create very pretty reports using external resources like images and JavaScript files. So it will have additional features that are unlike the what's available at the moment. And one thing, it will be easy to customize. And I will show you that in a little bit. And it will also support internationalization. And most importantly, it should be able to include any data at all from ZAP. And this is very different from the existing reporting where there's only a very limited amount of data. It's basically the alert data and nothing else. And what this framework will allow us to do is actually pull any information you like from ZAP. This might not be available immediately, but we intend to make sure that any data that you won't be able to get hold of, you will be able to do so. So here we have an example HTML report, or it's part of one, but I actually want to show you the whole thing. So I will just switch back to Atom, and hopefully here we will have the report template. And as you'll see, it is HTML and CSS and all those wonderful things. But you will see there are these kind of other elements. So this is Timeleaf here. And what this means is we can put these kind of tags in. And in this case, this is actually replacing the report title. So even though it's got report title in there and you can play around with whatever HTML designer you want, when it comes to generating the report, ZAP and Timeleaf will replace that with the relevant title. And if we scroll down, then what we'll find is that there are a whole load of other elements. So see here, we've got this summary of alerts, but actually what we're doing is we're pulling the value from a configuration file, because these reports can be internationalized. So if we have a translation of that, we can put that into whatever language we like. And you'll also see that we can do things, so we can actually loop through the description here. We're splitting it into an array based on the new line, and just so that we can actually put in a break unless we're on the last element. And all of this stuff is defined in Timeleaf, so you don't have to rely on our documentation for these kind of things. And if I scroll down a bit more, you can see you've got things like loops, so we can actually loop through the numbers 3 to 0. This is where we actually put out the different risks, the counts per risk, and where the things are tricky, we've actually got helper available, so we can convert that risk ID into a risk string. And what you'll also see is that what we're doing is when we get to putting out the alerts, what we're doing is we're looping through the alert tree. So what we've done is the alert tree that you see in the ZAP desktop is available to the reporting infrastructure. So it is able to actually loop through and pull any information it likes from there. So what you'll have seen before, when I showed you these reports, they looked pretty similar to the existing ZAP ones, but there is a subtle difference to the one here. I actually used a different template. And one of the things we found is that people have really asked for getting more information in the reports, including things like requests and responses. So we've got a separate template here, and you'll see you can actually show and hide the request and response. So if I click on that, it will then be expanded. So we've got all of the information available. Now this information comes from ZAP, but it's actually in the HTML. The reason we've put it behind this kind of show hide thing is because otherwise it was very difficult to read the report. But with different templates, you'll be able to display this information in any way you want. But this is just an example of showing the power of this templating infrastructure that we will have. Now, you might think that these reports are not very pretty, and you're right. And that is because it's early days for the reporting infrastructure, and also I don't think designing very pretty reports is one of the strengths of the ZAP core team, particularly not myself. And that is why we are going to have a ZAP reporting competition. So this is the third thing I'm announcing here. So we've got the automation framework, we've got the new reporting add-on, and now we've got a reporting competition. So the idea is we will be paying out $100 for every HTML or PDF template that we include with ZAP. And we're looking to kind of aim to accept around 10, but that'll be, plus or minus. So we're not going to have hundreds of different templates, but we do want to have around 10, but we want them to look different styles, but we do want them to be practical. And full details of this will be in a new ZAP blog post, which will be coming very soon. I don't know if it'll be out yet. I said I'm recording this beforehand, but it will be coming very soon. And the whole idea is we want you to come up with the great looking reports, and we want you to be able to include whatever information you think ZAP users will find useful. And so we'll be sharing information about the results of the questionnaire we had recently, and we'll have full links about how you can actually use the Timeleaf templating language, how you can get hold of the information that's already available from ZAP, and you can ask us for any other information that you want from ZAP. So I said, have a look on the ZAP blog post, on the ZAP blog. Very soon, we'll be advertising this on the user group and the developer group, try and make a big noise about it, but we would love to see what you can come up with. And that is it for me. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you like the sound of those things, and please join us on the ZAPCon Discord server, where I'll try and answer any of your questions.
Cool. Thank you, Simon. It's so awesome to see a bunch of new things coming to fruition in ZAP, the automation framework, and then the new reporting template engine and the reporting competition. So much Bitcoin availability. I don't know if we actually support or it's going to support Bitcoin. I saw everyone's comments in Discord. So I mean, the automation framework, when's that going to be ready for production?
Ooh, go on, start with the easy questions. Not. So that's a really good question. It's available right now, so you can download it. I wouldn't use it in production just yet, but I'd love people to play around with it and see what it's like and see how well it works, and let us know what's missing and what you need us to implement, because it is early days and we know that there will be extra things. There'll be things. There's a whole lot of things we've thought of. So we've got documentation which is published already. So I've just put that. We've just put that on zaproxy.org. So we've got docs there, and there's a link somewhere to the tracker issue where there's a lot of things we know we need to do, but I'm sure people will come up with other things that will suddenly be like, of course we need to do that, and that'll have to go in. So it will be ready when it's ready. We'll obviously announce all these things on the ZAP user group. So join that if you haven't already. We'll probably tweet about them as well. But hopefully what we'll be able to do is actually start replacing some functionality in the Docker package scans. So what I'm hoping we'll be able to do is actually start in the weeklies, actually using the automation framework for the Docker, for the package scans in some cases. There's some cases we won't be able to, but we'll kind of do a gentle rollover is the plan.
Awesome. That brings me to another question. Somebody was asking, does the automation framework work in the Docker scans and in the headless scan and in the desktop scan, and where can people expect that to work?
Well, the intention, the way we expect people to use it is from the command line with the -cmd option. So that way, ZAP, you don't get the desktop and you don't put ZAP in daemon mode either. It just runs in line, completes all the jobs and finishes. However, this will work in desktop as well. So if you want to test it out and see what's actually going on or debug things, you can do it that way. It does not depend on Docker, but it will, of course, run in Docker. But it'll also, one of the advantages of this framework is it'll run in any other container sort of technologies as well. So it's not restricted to Docker. You don't need Docker at all, which you did with the package scans, but it will work with Docker. And actually, we've just released the ZAP weekly release, and it's included. So we've got both the automation framework and the reporting in this week's weekly release. So you can have a play with it right now.
Awesome. So definitely feedback and suggestions for code improvements and all that good stuff.
Absolutely, yes.
Super well supported. That brings me to another point. We were talking, someone was mentioning screen readers in the chat, and having those reports be kind of A11Y compliant or compatible or whatever term you'd like to use for ADHD, or not ADHD, ADA compliance, that kind of stuff. In the States, it's ADA. What kind of things are you thinking about with A11Y features?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that was mentioned. It's one of those things that we're kind of aware of, but it's not something which forefront in our minds. So it's great to be reminded of these things. And it's really ideal timing, because with the reporting competition, the blog post isn't quite ready yet. We're still working on that, but that's going to be a requirement. We want to make sure that all of the ZAP reports, the new format reports, are completely compatible with screen readers. We know people use the ZAP desktop with screen readers, and it works to some extent, but it could be better, and we're trying to improve that. But the reports is one case, particularly as we're adding new ones now. That'll be an ideal time to make sure they are conform to all the latest standards.
Awesome. I know we were making a joke right before we came on stage here about the Hollywood report and the Hollywood interface for ZAP. Obviously, if anyone has a great idea, and awesome graphic designers, they could contribute that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we want the example reports we ship with ZAP, we want them to be really good quality, practical ones people will want to use. But if someone comes up with a great Hollywood report, it would be a shame not to include it. So absolutely, it's bring it on.
Yeah, someone needs to include the 3D.js library and make the whole thing fly through. And
Well, I am actually a fan of virtual reality. So, if you can,
Hey, there you go.
if you can have a report, I can look at it in VR. Then, absolutely, that'll be a
Awesome.
winner in my book.
Anybody got any questions for Simon in the Discord chat? I'm happy to try to answer them here. I know there was a lot of questions that flew by. I tried to grab some of them.
Yeah, I'm just getting this. I've got another screen here. I'm just seeing them.
Yeah.
Scroll past.
It's really good.
Dark theme. Oh yeah, we should have dark theme reports, definitely.
Cool. Simon, what do you think the timeline is? Obviously, people giving back to the project about automation framework to make it better and better and better is going to be super important. But what do you think as it stands now, what do you think your timeline estimation is for it's pretty ready to be used in a production environment?
I mean, the thing is, what it does well. This is one of the first times with ZAP, we traditionally haven't had a lot of unit tests. We've been trying to change it, trying to add them. And this is the first time I've had a really juicy development to get stuck into. And the unit tests for the automation framework are above 80% coverage. So it's one of these things like, okay, right, let's try and do this really properly. What the automation framework does so far, it does well, it does effectively, and it's doing the things under the covers that ZAP does anyway. So it's doing all the active scanning, spidering. We haven't changed those things, we're just driving them in a subtly different way. So I'm pretty confident about those things. It all comes down to what people want control over. And that's there's some basic things that, the authentication, that's going to be a key one. Mm-hmm. Things like saving the session, you can't even save the session right now. So, people are going to want to do that. But there are certain, we could look at the package scans and we could basically tell that if people select certain options or haven't selected certain options, we'll be able to actually put the automation framework into the package scan and use that instead. That's kind of one of the approaches. But, we've only just released this. We want feedback. We want people to play around with it, but I'm hoping we'll be able to get to a beta release quite quickly. We want to find out what people want. We'll start working through what we think the most important things are, and then we'll ask people and try and get more feedback and say, what do you really want to have in place before you can use it, and then we'll prioritize those things.
Yeah, awesome. I know we've talked about I just want to make sure everyone knows what we're talking about when we say the ZAP user group. That's been mentioned in Discord a couple of times and sometimes on this chat. And just want to make sure that everyone knows that that's a Google group. And if you want to find it, you can find it when you go to the community tab on zaproxy.org. Any other feedback about that thing?
Yeah, but we have a hidden menu item on ZAP on the desktop. It's not really hidden, it's there, it says online, but no one seems to find it. But if you go to the online menu item in ZAP, then it's got a link to the user group, the developer group, ZAProxy.org, all these good places. So yeah, find it via ZAProxy.org or via the ZAP desktop.
Awesome. And then for those that don't know, Stackhawk and Simon have been doing this ZAP deep dive series on YouTube. So Simon every couple weeks or every couple weeks, it's been intermittent while we're working on ZAPCon. But every couple of weeks we publish, Simon does a deep dive on ZAP with the Stackhawk engineering crew. And I'm sure Automation Framework will make its way into that series at some point. But if you ever want to get to a point where you're like, I don't understand how authentication works or how the spider works or the active scan works, Simon has done a great job of recording kind of 30-minute videos. We put them up on the Stackhawk YouTube page. Feel free to go check those out. Ask questions in the comments. Subscribe to that page and get notifications for when we publish new versions of them, all that good stuff. And someone just dropped a link to that in the Discord channel. I haven't seen any other questions in Discord other than how to comment false positives. That would be great stuff to get feedback about, like how would you expect that to work and what do you want it to look like, especially in kind of those automated scan frameworks. But I think that's Simon. You got anything else?
Yeah, with false positives, we do have on the zaproxy.org, there's frequently asked questions, and that is one of those. It's how do we handle false positives? How do we handle false negatives? All those good things. So have a look at the facts. We've got those. And with the deep dive, I think my plan actually tomorrow is to record the one on the reporting add-on. Because I realized I didn't actually show the reporting add-on at all, and that has a GUI. So I'll show that, the state it's in, and go into that in a bit more detail.
Awesome. Yet another video for me to edit.
You're so good at it, you know. You got nothing else to do now that ZAPCon's finished, have you?
Awesome. Simon, everybody in Discord, please give Simon a thank you, a virtual clappy thank you. So much good information. We're going to wrap this session up. We're going to take a break. Our next session should start at the top of the hour on mobile application security with Ankush and Milan, which is also a really, really cool talk. And then we'll have Q&A with them as well. So that's that mobile application start at 9:50 Pacific time. I think the slide is going to say something else when we're during the break. But I think that's it. Simon, thank you so much. And we'll catch everybody on the next topic about mobile application security testing with ZAP, which is also really, really cool.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you all.